This is Ethan with ComTech. Hopefully you guys can see me. I can't see myself in the video here, so I'm assuming that you can see me. Mike is with us as well, which is our CEO. He is going to be monitoring the chat and making sure that if you guys have any questions whatsoever, just put them in the chat. We will definitely get those answered. I'm not going to be monitoring that while I'm doing this, but Mike will kind of raise his hand and stop me if I need to stop. So thank you for joining. Definitely thank you. I know it takes a little bit of time out of your day and it's at the end of the day. So hopefully we can kind of hang out for the next 45 minutes and get through some of this stuff. Let's go straight into it. I don't want to take up any more time with introductions other than this little small piece here. This is me, as you can probably see on the video. But I have been at ComTech since literally before I could walk. Mike started the company. I am his son, so he kind of had me there all the time. But when I got out of high school, I went and did a couple of other things, and then I came back, and I've been here for about 10 years now, full time. So that has been a joy and an experience. I've worked with a number of you guys, and you probably know if you have worked with me before, one of the things that I enjoy doing is presentations like this. I enjoy taking the chaos that comes from all of the different pieces of hardware and pieces of software and what Microsoft is doing lately, whatever they choose to do, Microsoft and the rest of them, and taking whatever that is and trying to make order out of it. Same type of thing, which we'll be talking about today, which is BYOD, bring your own device. It's opened up a world, at least for IT departments, it's opened up a world of complexity because it just adds so many different layers because now you're not dealing with the same types of machines. Everybody at home has different machines, different capabilities. Their home network may not be what your business network is as far as speed and such. It's almost certainly not. So making order out of that chaos is what I enjoy doing. If you do not know who ComTech is, I like to just throw this slide in here. It's going to take 1 minute just so we introduce ourselves and let you know that we're not the new kid on the block. So we've been around since 1990 now. And at this point, we've got a team of 15 plus technicians. What we specialize in is small to medium business and local government. And where we really shine. We have lots of different services, of course, and this is not going to be a sales pitch. We're going to get right into the material after this. But where we shine at is the becoming your IT department. So the smaller businesses that need an IT department, they need the planning, they need the structure, that sort of thing. That is where we shine. So that's us in a nutshell. Now let's get to why you guys came here today. So here is the agenda. I'm just going to throw it up on the screen here, and I'm not going to read all these different pieces because we're about to go through it right now. One thing I did fail to mention, of course, at the beginning of this webinar is there will be definitely a section at the end for questions. Put your questions, as I said, in the chat, and we'll try to answer them as we go along. But there will be time at the end, and there will also, this will be recorded, so you can play it back at any point. So the first thing, of course, is BYOD. If you don't know what it is, if you haven't heard that term, I'm sure you still know what it is. It is bring your own device. This it's getting more and more popular. It certainly has gotten more popular with COVID hitting and that sort of thing. A lot of different people are just saying, hey, I need to work from home. And a lot of different businesses are saying, I don't want to spend money and buy everybody laptops at home so they can work at home when I've already spent the money to build out the infrastructure in your office. So instead, they just say, hey, use your home computer, log in remotely to our network, and be able to work from home if you have to quarantine or something like that. So this has been as I mentioned at the very beginning of the webinar, this is it's becoming more and more popular, and I don't think it's going to go away. I certainly don't think it's going to go away. So, some of the benefits, of course, of BYOD, there are benefits and there's also pieces that we need to think about because it can kind of work both ways. And I'll tell you a little bit as we go through here what ComTech does for our own employees, what we do, and how we kind of handle BYOD. But there are certainly some benefits. One, I've already talked about, which is cost to the employer. If you guys were, before the pandemic, if you were buying laptops and docking stations at your office, and you put that way, the employee can take their laptop, they can bring it to the office, they can plug it in. Then you also bought the same setup at their house and sent it home with them. You have to essentially buy double the setup. You have to buy it in multiple places. Um, so you don't have to do that with BYOD. If your business model supports it and your software supports it, then you can just say, hey, use your home computer, log into this one website, and you can work. I'm seeing a number of companies do that right now. And that's depending on the security and things we're going to talk about here in a minute. There's nothing wrong with that. But the main benefit, I would say, is the cost to the employer. They don't have to worry about managing a replacement schedule on the machines, because if the machine becomes out of date, it's the employee's issue. They need to get their own machine because it's their device. The company doesn't have to pay for it. Potentially quicker setup. So these next two items I put a star on, and the star means we need to think about it. In the past, when you had corporate managed devices, an employee starts and you'd get them a phone, you'd get them a computer, that sort of thing. That means most of the time you have to order the computer, you have to order the phone, you have to get it con- configured properly by your IT department. If you are in a place where BYOD works, then it is as simple as, they go to your home computer, log into this website, and you can access all of the data that you need to access, whatever those applications are or whatever it may be. So it could be or it could be quicker setup. The next point is increased productivity. That's what I was saying a second ago. It could, and I want to emphasize could here, increase the employee's productivity. Let me give you an example. With our techs, a lot of our techs are big geek computer type people, so they have their computer at home customized the way that works best for them. They have all their icons in the right area, they have all their bookmarks in the right area on their web browsers, they've got all their keyboard shortcuts figured out, that sort of thing. So if they're allowed to work from their home machine and they know where everything's at and they can move very, very quickly around their own home machine, then there is a chance that they're going to be quicker in doing what we need them to do, which is, getting around with a bunch of tabs and different applications and that sort of thing. So it's okay for us in that instance. So there's a chance that there's increased productivity. Now, before we just say, hey, it's cheaper and we're going to increase the productivity, and it's going to be quicker setup, I still say let's hold on and let's think before we act. Let's not just send everyone home and say, hey, everybody use your own home computer, and that's just it. That I would not recommend that. We need to think about it. And here's some of the items that we have to think about. The first one, It's pretty simple. Like, it's pretty glaringly obvious, and that is security. You don't want to open up a whole bunch of holes into your network and have everybody kind of doing their own thing. If you do that, I feel like your IT will seriously have a problem. They'll probably be pretty upset. So don't do that. What is on that device and what's on that network? Uh, Same type of thing here. It falls up under security. So that is, if you have an employee that's at home, what is on their home computer? Is it going to be able to come over to your corporate network, to your company network, and infect your company data? Or even worse, is it going to travel through your company network and get to your end customer? Now, that probably doesn't apply to a lot of you guys, but it certainly applies to us. We're very, very particular on that here at ComTech because we have access to so many of our clients' networks. We want to make sure that anything that comes through our network, it can't get past, it can't get past that level into our clients. So you could just think about that, because you never know what's on that home computer of that employee. Data theft, I hope and pray that you guys aren't having to deal with this. I really do. But it's just something to think about. If employees are working at home and they're using their own home computer, if they're saving documents on their own home computer that are corporate documents, their company data, we need to be aware of that, because that's going to be something we cover in the policy here in just a little bit. Another point of entry. Same type of thing with security, but again, I have a star here, so we need to think about it. So I'm about to make a big generalization, and there's really kind of two different types of working from home. There is the first type is being able to just simply remote in to a computer at the office using TeamViewer, using ComTech's remote control system, using LogMeIn, whatever it may be. You are controlling a machine at the office. That is that's one type. The other type is poking for. I'm not going to get any more technical than this, but poking a hole in your network or in your firewall to allow a machine to connect to your network. So that's a different type. That's like a VPN. So when you do that second type, what happens is for all purposes, you connect the two networks. So you connect your user's home network to your business. That, I'm not saying that's the end of the world, because it's not. We still have a number of clients that are doing it. As long as you do it in a safe manner, it's okay. Again, it's exactly what I was just talking about, is you don't want to open up that hole and connect the two networks if your employee's home computer is infected with ransomware. Very, very bad idea, because it's coming over. It's definitely coming over, but there are ways to stop that. So we need to think about it. Privacy, if you have an employee, and especially if they're doing information, if they're doing things that are involving your client's data or any confidential data. A good one is an accounting person. If that person is planning on going to the local Starbucks, joining the public Wi-Fi, and jumping on your QuickBooks and that sort of thing, bad idea. Or I would say it's a bad idea, personally. I don't want my accounting person sitting at Starbucks doing QuickBooks. So just think about that privacy aspect. It's something that you have to think about, because you can't control what happens out there. Inside of your office, you kind of know who's walking in and out of the accounting department, and you can control that a little bit more. Commingling of data. We've already talked a little bit about this when I said data theft. If the employees are saving documents on their local home machines, I don't recommend that if it's company data. The same goes for the flip side here, which is the mixing the data all in one folder or whatever. It's the same reason why we here at ComTech don't recommend you having employees that save their personal iPhone music or something like that on the company machine. we don't want to commingle the data, because when we do that, then it turns into a mess. If that employee ever happens to leave and they want their iTunes information, it can be a mess to get it back to them and such. It's better to leave business business and personal personal. Now, we've got the flip side of what I'd said just a few minutes ago. So there's always, as you know, there's always two extremes. Loss of productivity. I have seen all of our techs pretty much have through all this COVID stuff, have went through uh, a rotation of working from home. And that, as far as I know, and as far as I can see in the future, it's going to stay that way, because it seems to work quite well for us. But I know for a fact that some employees work really well at home. They can focus. They either don't have kids, or they ask their kids to, quiet down, and they're able to focus. And then other employees, they absolutely cannot focus whatsoever. If they're at home, they remember they've got to do the laundry. They remember they got to do this, they got to do that, whatever it may be. So loss of productivity is a serious consideration, or it should be, because you do not, as a business owner, you don't want them. You can't necessarily monitor them the same way. I'm not saying everybody's like that. Certainly give it a try, and reach out to us if you have any questions on that. We'll tell you our experience exactly and how we're doing it. But and this is getting into kind of remote from home, or work from home, and not BYOD, although it does mold together pretty tightly. But just be aware of that. So if we talk about recommendations, what we're gonna do here is we're gonna go through recommendations and some examples, is what I'm going to do on different ones that we see. Now, these recommendations are that I'm going to get in a little bit of the nitty gritty, but not too bad. But it actually is pretty simple. When we talk about recommendations here at ComTech from BYOD, or remoting, working from home, it's really, we go just simply back to the basics. And what we call the basics is, number one, what is the goal? So is the goal to work from home temporarily, because that's going to change the situation, whether or not we allow you to use BYOD or use your own device, or you're going to get a corporate managed device that we're going to issue you, which, the difference there is, hey, I'm only at home a week versus I'm going to try this work from home thing for 3 months. Well, then maybe we ought to think about just using your corporately managed device. What level of access is needed, and the pieces that are in red, that's the main pieces. So what programs does that person need to run? I can't tell you how often I hear, hey, so-and-so got exposed to COVID, or they just need to go home because they've got a sick kid. Give them remote access. Well, that we have to go back through these basics, because remote access to one person means their entire machine. They need to be able to remote in and remote control their machine. Another person's remote access means literally go to a web browser, type in the Office 365 email, and you can get into your Outlook. That's all they need. So those are just two totally different things, and they take two totally different setup times and potential training and that sort of thing. Third thing, what is the confidential data? So the company data, and where is it being stored? So if example there is the data being stored in the cloud? Is it on SharePoint? Is it inside of your line of business applications? Is it there, or is it all local to the business? Is there no way for that person to get access to the shared drives that are off of your server? Because that's where all the company data is stored, because that changes the conversation. Then that means that we need to get them back connected to the main base. And then finally, and that's it. There's only four. Finally, is what policies need to be in place to make this happen. There's lots of different policies that we can talk about, but I'll talk about the most common ones, or the ones that we kind of recommend and what we see the most and kind of what we do with our guys. Um, I'll go into the individual ones as we do these examples. I won't go into all of these right now because they'll make more sense as I give the examples. If you have not seen my webinar that I did about designing your IT strategy for 2021, if you go to YouTube and just search ComTech Network Solutions, you will see it there. You should see it there. If you don't, message in the chat, and maybe Mike can reach out and grab it. I mention that because it talks a lot about these policies as well, and talks about what we are seeing and kind of the policies that we recommend setting up. That way, you kind of get the most productivity out of your users. So the first example is Rob. He's an accountant at a local manufacturing company. He got hit with COVID, or his family did, so he just needs to simply quarantine. Well, again, we go back to the basics. What is the goal? To work all day, every day for the next 14 days. So in this case, it's not a permanent thing. We literally need to give him temporary access to his machine at the office, pretty much. We don't want to buy a device and send it home with him, that sort of thing. He is truly going to use his own device and get in. And then what programs does he need access to? QuickBooks, Office products. He needs his phone system. That's that's pretty much it. Nothing too crazy. Confidential data, QuickBooks Online, and SharePoint. And because all of the data is being stored in SharePoint, they're not storing any of the data on the local server at wherever the office may be. And then the policies are work from home policy, company AV installed, and a default logout policy. So let me explain this example a little bit more. If the goal we've already went over, the programs, that's pretty simple. If it's that many programs and he has access back to a device at the office, then I would probably recommend that, just so he can work efficiently as possible. If he's going to work all day, every day for 14 days, then he can just remote back in, and he'll have every bit of that stuff. Now, as far as the data and the programs and what he's used to. Now, regardless of that, I would still recommend, if you guys don't have a work from home policy, and that can be very simple, but we've discovered that there are certain things that you just don't come across when everybody's coming into the office. Not saying it's a problem here at ComTech. I've seen it. And an example is, you work from 8 to 5. Yeah, you may be salary, but you work from 8 to 5 when you're at the office. It's very clear for bosses and managers and such if someone's late. It may not be as clear if someone's late from 8 to 5 when they're working at home. So just be aware of that sort of thing, as well as having it written in documentation saying, hey, if you're on a phone call with a client, it needs to be as quiet. It needs to be in a good place as far as your surroundings and such. I don't want you in Starbucks with just a whole bunch of noise and it sounding very unprofessional. I don't want that. But if that information is written in documentation, I think it's good, because then no one gets their feelings hurt when you as the owner or boss are listening to call recordings or however it is, and you hear stuff in the background and go, hey, I'm gonna have to pull you back in. You got to come back into the office. Again, I keep getting over into the remote worker, but these just kind of mesh with BYOD. Company AV installed. If you are accessing the company data, at least for us, if you're accessing the company data, and depending on how you're accessing it, most of the time at ComTech, we're going to want an agent on your machine, so that way we can install antivirus. I don't want any chance, I've already said this, but I don't want any chance of data from your network coming over to mine. I just don't want any chance of that, especially if it's going to be infected or anything like that. I can't take that risk. And then the final thing there is a default logout policy, exactly like you would have at your office. If you don't have an inactivity policy where somebody's desktop doesn't, nobody moves the mouse or anything for 5-10 minutes, it needs to lock. Same type of thing. Again, you don't know what their home environment is. It's pretty easy to set that stuff up. That is recommended. So example number 2. Sherry's office manager for a local dentist, and she does remote billing for the dentist at night. So the goal, only to work at night in the billing platform. Now, this is a little bit different. She hasn't told us if this is going to be permanent or if this is going to be just temporary. It doesn't necessarily matter. She is going to use her own device. So we're going to then set up some other parameters here. As far as the programs, she only needs access to the billing program. We're not going to give her just full keys to the castle. Where's the confidential data? It's all inside of whatever program they're using. If they're a dentist, they're probably using EagleSoft or Dentrix or something like that. And then finally, what policies need to be in place? Those policies that I would recommend is just to, again, restrict it down as much as possible. We've got to put up the barriers and the security the best way we can without it limiting her ability to work efficiently in the best way possible. So if she says, I'm 100% sure it's only going to be from this time to this time, then I would think about doing that. If it's a corporately managed device, if you happen to hand her a device, then maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe you have your agent on there, you have monitoring going on, you have an IT department that is managing that and has a corporate AV, that sort of thing. If that's the case, then maybe you don't need that. But I threw it out there just in case. Multi-factor, I would say it needs to be enabled on any remote access across the board. I cannot recommend that enough. It's frustrating. I admit it's frustrating to have to type in a username, then a password, then pull out your cell phone, wait for a text, or go into an authenticator app that changes the code every 30 seconds. It's frustrating. I know. It's worth it. I'm telling you, it's worth it because I've seen the other side. I've seen what happens when you don't have it enabled and somebody gets in or a bot gets in and they start buying stuff or whatever it may be. The final thing is something to think about is, especially with BYOD, is involve your IT, involve your managers. Have some sort of a training. You don't even necessarily have to have a training policy, but you just need to be aware of it. You need to be ready for it. And the reason why I say that is because if that user's working from home, they're working at nighttime. Well, it's simple to say, tell the IT department, hey, set this up. And so tries to go home at night and they try to make it work. If they try to make it work and they can't, and they need to get in and do that stuff, but your IT department's closed, just think about that. So just keep that in mind because, and it also, like I said, it adds complexity if the user is using their own device. If they're using a corporately managed device, you might be able to hand them a laptop and the IT department say, on the screen, on the desktop, I have this icon. I've already set it up for you, that sort of thing. It's a little bit different if they're using their own device because the IT department says, go to this website. And of course, the user's sitting there going, I don't know what browser to use. What about this error message? So there's just, it adds a little bit of complexity. Example number 3, this is going to essentially be like us. This is kind of what it's going to be. It's going to be ComTech. So we're a local IT firm and we need the ability to pretty much work from anywhere across the board. Now, this is something that I see happen. I use the example of IT, but this happens all the time. A lot of our clients are coming in saying, "Hey, we need to be able to work from anywhere, any device. I don't care if I leave my laptop. Um, if I leave my laptop at home and I go to a friend's house, I need to be able to pull up a laptop and get in." So the goal, of course, is work from anywhere. Programs, line of business applications, office applications, all the data again is being stored in SharePoint. It's not being stored on the local server. And then this is kind of what policies I would put in place. So any devices that user is using on a routine basis, then I would like to get them added to the corporate tools, the monitoring agent, the antivirus, that sort of thing. That example I just gave you, though, of that person walking over to, going to their friend's house and saying, "Oh, I forgot that. I need to log in." I wouldn't say add an agent to your friend's computer. I wouldn't say that. Instead, what I would say is we would have other stuff set up, like the multi-factor authentication, um, those types of things where the IT department can monitor what's kind of happening. That way, we're not getting anything coming over that shouldn't come over. If you do add the corporate tools, if you're able to add a monitoring agent or you're able to add those to your employees' computers, then it should push down lockout policies. It should push down ransomware protection. So if that device has ransomware on it, it immediately shuts it down. And it immediately pops up a thing that says, "Hey, this thing's been locked until the IT department can check it out because we think it has ransomware. We'll be in touch." So there's those types of things that can happen. And what you're doing, which you'll see here in just a second, is I know that that's actually leaning towards making it a corporate managed device, not corporate owned, because the user still owns it. But it's at some places, again, get with your IT department to ask them the question. At sometimes that is what we recommend. If it's going to be accessing confidential information and it's on a routine basis, then we need to at least think about managing that device properly.
Ethan, we actually did have a question about that.
Okay.
Um, uh, Keith asked, how can businesses insist on AV installation, password requirements, etc., on devices they do not own? There's a second part to it as well. We'll get to that in just a second. But do you have any ideas on that?
So some of this next click will help a little bit, although so this is insisting, and again, Mike, you weigh in here. This is insisting I can't enforce it, and that's one of the things that is frustrating. I don't necessarily like, from a control point of view. As you can tell, I'm a little bit of a control freak, just because I'm so worried about our clients' data and anything getting out that shouldn't get out. But having a policy like a access control policy, simply saying if you are going to access ComTech's uh, data, company data, and that extends to our clients' data, then you must have this on. You must have this on. You must have a password that is complex. You must have this, that sort of thing. Again, that's recommended. That is them signing a policy saying, "I approve this," or, "I'm going to do this." It's not enforcing it. You can't force them to do that on their home computer, but you can say in that access control, our IT department's going to follow up. Our IT department, on a routine basis, will follow up and they will check. They will check this, this, and this. So you could do something like that to do the enforcement. Mike, was that kind of where we were going with that?
It is, and there are a couple of things that do get actually enforced in a way. For example, if you allow an employee to load Outlook, for example, to access his 365 account on his personal device, doesn't matter if it's a Android tablet, iPad, phone, whatever, then when they log in for the very first time, it has a policy that you must agree to, or it will not allow the account to be set up. And that policy actually allows us, or any admin on the 365 account, to do a remote wipe of that device. So that's one of the reasons why you do want to have policies actually out there so the person knows, hey, if I'm going to be using my personal equipment, I'm giving up some things here for convenience, and some of it's all in the name of security. Now we have, for example, here at our office, you gave a good example, Ethan, is that we do enforce it on ours. If you're working from home, you don't have a choice. You're getting an agent on your machine, you're getting monitoring, you're getting patching, you're getting antivirus, and you're getting third-party controls that let me lock down passwords and lets me remote wipe that machine, because our data is so sensitive. If I even think that machine has been compromised, it's coming into the office or it's getting wiped, one or the other. We're not taking any chances. So there is software that allows that kind of control. How far you want to go with it depends on your business and what your risk tolerance is. But and I think that actually answers the other question that Keith had about how do you control secure destruction. That's how we do it. Is the devices do have remote wipe capability. So if they get stolen or compromised, then we can send a remote wipe command and wipe them out and securely destroy the data. Yes, that will take care of the family pictures and everything else. But again, that's one of the risks that you take when you allow BYOD. It's got a lot of benefits, but you've got to keep the company data secure. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody always freaks out when they hear about that policy, as far as being able to remote wipe a phone, or something like that. I, I've been in this business for quite some time now, and not as long as Mike has, but it's so rare that we actually have to do that. It's extremely rare that, and I can count on my hand the number of times. And most of the time, that was a bot or something had gotten in and set up an email. It wasn't an actual user that we had to wipe all their stuff. So again, being upfront with your employees though, and having these signed documents and making sure they understand these policies is very, very good. So access control, that's what we kind of just went over. If you're going to access our data, then these are the prerequisites. You're not going to some random hotel public computer to log into our QuickBooks. That's not going to happen. BYOD policy, that's the same type of thing as far as in here, most of the time. And again, we can give you guys these sample policies if you would like to look over them and then edit them however you see fit. But in here we put in our documents that at any time the owners have the ability to say, hey, you can't use a device anymore for this or this, that sort of thing. So it's very black and white on this is how you can use your own devices, this is how you cannot. Security incident, that's pretty obvious. If there is a security incident, I don't care if you're on your own device or your own ComTech device, doesn't matter. This is how we handle it. This is the documentation we fill out, so that way it's very clear on what happened, how we responded, how long it took, that sort of thing. Termination policy and equipment disposal, I'll carry those together. That actually goes right into that question, Mike. And thank you, Keith, for asking that. Is how do we dispose of the equipment? We have some clients who say, hey, we don't store anything locally. Everything's stored in the cloud. It's stored at another location, hosted with our line of business apps. We really don't care. Just take the machine and throw it away. We're good, or recycle it. We have other clients who say, hey, we have very sensitive data. we need a certificate of destruction every single time. We've got to have that certificate of destruction on file, and sent back to us. That's perfectly fine. Termination policy: if our relationship terminates, this is what's going to happen. We've got some clients who say, hey, nobody's storing anything. We're good. It really doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. Take it off your phone. That's it. We don't have to wipe your phone or anything. We'll just remotely remove the email. We'll make it stop working. No problem. We have other clients who say, hey, if you leave the corporation, you need to understand that our IT department is going to call you. They're going to remote into your home machine with your help, and you're going to help them, and they're going to glance and make sure that there's no corporate data on there. We have both sides. Again, it depends upon how confidential information, where your confidential information is stored. That's kind of what it boils down to. My final piece on these policies is, as much as humanly possible, keep it as simple as possible. That can get hard to do sometimes, but keep it as simple as possible, because if an employee starts and you hand them 53 pages or 53 different policies, they're going to probably sign it, but they're not going to read anything, which means they're not going to follow anything. So just be aware of that. So real quick, what is coming, and I'm pretty much coming up on my last two slides. I'm running out of time. I thought that I was going to finish early, but what we think is coming, what almost certainly I know is coming, is more of the bring your own device, primarily because a lot of applications are going to the cloud. They're just literally, you open up a web browser, you can do just about anything you want. A lot of applications are going that way. Not all, but a lot of them. We have lawyers right now that work 100% in a web browser. They can go to any single machine, they can log in, they can put their multi-factor code in, and they can work. They can be anywhere in the world, and they can work and get to all their stuff, and everything goes through that web browser, their email, everything. If that's the case, then the company very well may not need to buy machines anymore. They can just say, hey, you need to bring your own machine. This is the machine we recommend, or something like that, but you can bring your own machine. Less office space rented. You guys know that. That's just everybody's kind of going home and working. Users wanting to work across multiple devices. Again, that goes into, at some point, that goes into BYOD. The company's going to say, I'm not buying you a cell phone anymore. I'll pay a piece of the cell phone bill, but I'm not buying everybody a company cell phone, and I'm not buying you multiple laptops and that sort of thing. The final piece with what I think is coming soon, and this has always been a thing, and I'm seeing it even more, and I understand it, is relaxed security. Is the more devices we come up, the more it's just a frustration to deal with MFA or multi-factor. So we just turn it off. It's just simpler to turn it off. I can't recommend to keep your guard up. I really can't. We had a client just recently who has Office 365, does not have multi-factor turned on. A bot got in there after a phishing attempt, so they got the password. They went in there and they bought 50 license. It was over 50 license in Office 365. And I'm not talking about the $4 license. I'm talking about the $35, $50 license. So they just really rack up a bill. So just be aware of that. With just don't relax your security just because it's a hassle. We've got to find that balance there. So the takeaways is, if you don't have any BYOD policies and you haven't thought about it, at least now's the time to maybe start thinking about it. If your users start asking, or even before they start asking, remember the basics. What's the goal? What programs? What data? And then what policies do we need to form around that? Have a termination policy for BYOD, as well as all devices. I recommend all devices. That way we all are clear on how we're dealing with data and the destruction of it. Set up MFA on all items, especially all items that are coming from outside of the office, coming back into it. definitely set up multi-factor. And then the final piece here is plan support for your users. If you're working with an IT department, plan the support as far as because no IT department, just like I'm sure any department, they don't like surprises. So if all your users are going home and working on their own computers, when they call in for support, if your IT department doesn't know those computers exist, don't know what they're doing, don't know what they're trying to do, then support becomes a little bit more of a struggle. So just think about that. I think this is the final slide before the questions. So there's everything I've been talking about, and I apologize, everyone, I'm going to run just a hair bit over, but everything that I've been talking about is everybody going home and working, and everybody using their own home machines to do that sort of thing. There is the flip side of this. I don't see it very often, but I do see it. Again, with that lawyer type scenario that I was talking about earlier, is an employee starts and the employer says, "Hey, you need to bring your own device. We don't provide devices at all. You just simply need a laptop." From what I have seen, most of the time when that happens, the corporation, if everything's in the cloud and they can just access everything from a web browser and it's really not a security risk, blah, 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 then it's fine. But if it's not, then their IT department are acting like those devices are corporately owned. The user still owns them, but it'd be the equivalent of a new employee starting at ComTech and we saying, "Hey, we don't provide devices. You've got to bring your own." But so you're clear, when you bring your own, I've got to put my own antivirus on it. I've got to put some policies on it so that it locks out and that sort of thing. You can still log into your own account, but you're going to have a separate user account for ComTech. So they act like it's corporately owned. Again, I don't see this happening a tremendous amount because when you tell people that, most people say, "It's my device. You're not putting anything on it." Well, that's fine. Here's our policy saying if you don't allow us to put things on it, then you just can't access the company data, and you need to be able to access the company data to do your job. Again, I don't see that happening a lot, but it does happen. The final piece is something that I do see happen all the time. When I say all the time, I mean all the time. And that is the lack of a separate wireless. I threw this really basic picture in and I just found it online. But users come in, whether it's a third party, it's a contractor or whatever it may be. They come in, they sit in your office. Maybe they're sitting there at your conference room, you're having a meeting, and they say, "Hey, what's your wireless? I need to get it on with my laptop." Well, a lot of people do not have separated wireless. You should have an internal wireless that the only devices that ever connect to it are your own devices that you really trust inside of your network. And then you should have a guest wireless. And that guest wireless should be totally separate. So it should be separated. It doesn't have to be two totally physically different boxes, but it needs to be just like this. As you can see, there's a big split right here where it is two separate things, because what you don't want to do is give them your internal wireless. That's the equivalent of someone you walking in and you just saying, "Hey, here's your user account, jump on any computer and you're on our network." And not saying they can do damage, but it's not a good idea. Another thing with that is we see a lot of employees jumping on the wireless for the jumping on the wireless on their cell phone. It's okay if it's the public wireless. It doesn't need to be the corporate internal wireless. So hopefully that makes sense. That is all that I had. Mike, were there any other questions that we needed to answer? And I apologize, everyone. I did not mean to run over just a little bit. I meant to leave time for questions.
Sure. I just have a couple Couple of things real quick, and in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and answer it because I've already seen the question and had time to think about it. So just speed it along. Someone did ask, is it okay if I use things like Dropbox and Google Drive because that's what I use at home? And I would have to say that it's best policy to not allow that. And the reason is basically it's uncontrolled. If you're downloading private corporate data and as a convenience, you're dropping it into your personal Google Drive, then there is no tracking, there is no security. It's basically letting your data get out into the wild, and that's something that you don't want to allow. That comes back to the privacy and the corporate owned data, and that needs to be well understood and documented in the company policy for BYOD and just for how to handle company data in general. We do have controls where we can help restrict that. We can search for programs such as Google Drive, Dropbox, and so forth on devices that we're monitoring. So if that's ever a concern, we can identify those programs and let you know what machines it exists on, so then it could be removed. So that would be my answer to that question. Let's see, I was trying to see if there was anything else here. I think that was about it. I just have one final concept I just wanted all of you guys to think about in terms of security. Um, Obviously, the old design before everybody started working from home was that we all sort of lived in a castle at our office. We had walls, we had firewalls. You knew what was inside the perimeter. And the reason we've been pushing security so hard the last couple of years is because as folks start to work more and more remote, it's basically it breaks down those walls. You don't have a perimeter anymore. The business class firewall that protected your network and kept you safe, now these people are working from home. And that's why we have to extend out the security and put the right tools on these devices because you don't have the internal monitoring. You don't have the business class firewall. And if you ignore that, you will pay a penalty at some point. That's just, there's too many threats out there. You will pay a penalty one way or another. So pay attention to these things, pay attention to security. It is important. And I'm sorry we did run over. Ethan, I'll let you wrap it up. That was the last.
Okay, I think that was it. Except for my final sign off will be, if you are not, I'll say it again, if you do not have multi-factor authentication turned on, especially for your email, that sort of thing, please get in touch with us. We'll be more than happy to help you. But that is a big thing for us. So that is all that I have for today. If you guys have my email and you've got my phone number, give me a call anytime. Be more than happy to chat with you. And uh, we will see you on the next webinar. Have a good one.